here at Gorilla Expense, and I'll be walking you through some of the pain points that we've seen from our customers with expense reporting, how we solve those pain points for them, and then of course we'll spend most of the time with the demo of the solution itself from the standpoint of really looking at end-to-end T&E automation. So what I have is just to quickly introduce ourselves. I'll walk through some of the pain points. I'll discuss why you want to automate T&E and why now is the best time to do it, and then how you go about doing it. What's the first step that you take? And then, of course, we'll look at the demo of the application itself. There will be time at the end for Q&A, so if you have any questions as you go through the webinar, please type them in the questions box, and we can discuss them in more detail towards the end of the webinar. Logistically, if you're not able to see my screen or not able to hear me, please put that in the questions box as well, and either myself or Amanda might just find out what's going on to see if you're having any screen or audio problems. So with that, jumping in, just to introduce ourselves really quickly, expense reporting is what we do, and we have a really robust solution that handles most of the pain points when it comes to expense reporting. And as you can see, with a manual paper-based expense reporting process, it's just too frustrating and just too time-consuming. The way we've approached our goal, our mission, is to provide companies with solid spend management, in terms of visibility, in terms of knowing what's going on with the business when it comes to the different areas of spend. And normally you're talking about T&E, timesheet, and then we also have a P-card solution. So the T&E product is what we'll look at today. We will be importing some corporate card expenses into the application, so I'll show you what that looks like. But we also have a separate purchase card reconciliation solution. Those are the ones where you might have one or two P-cards that's used for spending on airfare or pretty much even non-travel expenses for the entire company. So we can reconcile those as well for GP, and there's a separate product for that. And we have a timesheet solution as well in case you're looking at time and expense, mainly for project accounting type requirements. In terms of validation, in terms of recognition, we're one of the companies that was sponsored by Microsoft a few years ago, where they asked us to showcase our solution at the demo conference, mainly because of the ease of use of our product and in the way we integrated with the entire Dynamics ERP suite. Of course, today we'll look at the integration with Dynamics GP. So that's just our journey so far in terms of being blessed by Microsoft. So with that, I'll walk you through some of the pain points. You can probably relate to some, if not all of these. We call them the Excel and Scotch tape pain points, and they really affect companies of all sizes. Doesn't matter which industry you are. It's just too much of a hassle, too much of a problem for travelers, managers, and accounting, and a time-consuming process when you use Excel and tape for receipts. Constantly challenged with missing receipts, missing data. That's always a problem. Companies that are looking to manage their policies, that's just, you can apply some policies on Excel, but there's only so far you can go. And of course, this is a favorite from our customers, especially from the accounting and the AP departments, where they have to manually key in the data into GP, and sometimes there are other systems as well. And it's just a cumbersome and a frustrating process that doesn't really add value. Paper-based, more and more companies are looking to move away from paper. And finally, what we've seen with some of our customers is expense reporting can become an emotive subject with employees, especially with employees who are on the road all the time, away from home, away from family. It can get tricky. And one of the examples that I typically share is one of our customers had a salesperson on the road, and he was doing a great job. He was closing deals left and right, but he had close to $70,000 on his corporate card that he had not reported because he had to come in to the office to put the receipts in an envelope and submit that. And that's just very frustrating for him because he's on the road trying to close business. So that leads to a very tricky situation between the VP of sales and the CFO. And if you handle that, you take care of the problem and you essentially put money back into the company's pocket, right? So now you're probably thinking, okay, those are some of the points that apply to me, but why should I do this? Why should I do it now? Why is it more applicable today? And how do you go about doing it? Well, why automate T&E? This is a quote from our friends at CFO.com, where they interviewed several CFOs and controllers, and what they said is T&E is second only to payroll in terms of the size of spend in a corporate budget. So it's a lot of money that companies spend in T&E, and it's only expected to rise. So as costs continue to climb, companies have more and more people on the road, and they're looking to get a better handle on T&E. And the best part is if you can manage it well, if you know where the gaps are, where the problems are, it can be controlled, and if it can be controlled, then you can put money back into the company's pocket. That's what it comes down to. Because the follow-up to that is why now, why today? Well, that's because we're sitting in the middle of this really, really awesome technological age where there's a convergence of new mobile technologies, cloud technologies that really make the capture of items like receipts and expenses much more easier, much more simpler, right? So the starting piece is mobile. Literally every sales or marketing person who's on the road has a mobile device. They access their CRM systems, their emails, they obviously make phone calls from the mobile device, so it's almost a no-brainer. And then you combine that with the cloud where you have access to systems, you have access to data anywhere, anytime, as long as you have a browser. And also with that comes the software as a service business model, which makes it a pay-as-you-go kind of a format, which is very attractive, very economical. You flip a switch, the service is on. You flip a switch again, you don't like it, the service is turned off. It just takes care of the classic CapEx versus OpEx debate that companies used to have in the past. And then you tie that up with integrating the data with multiple systems, right? Most of the travelers, if not all, they're not just challenged by the amount of data, but also by the source of the data, right? You have corporate card expenses, you have a receipt in front of you, and then you've got a receipt in your inbox that's come via email. How do you bring all of those together? On the other side, on the accounting and the AP side, you've got to send expense data to GP. Maybe you have a payroll system, and it just gets very tricky. It gets very complicated to manage, but most of the new systems and the new products out there today have really robust integration mechanisms that let these systems talk to each other. So it's almost a no-brainer. The timing could just not be better. I mean, it's the best time to look at this. And the follow-up question that we typically get asked after that is, okay, so this sounds interesting. Where do we start? What's the first step that we take? And that's where we have kind of an overview diagram that shows how we bring all the different moving pieces together in one place for the company to manage, in one place for managers to review or take care of expenses, for employees to submit expenses with receipt data easily and in a very non-disruptive way. Because that's the other piece, is you don't want to change too many processes too fast or too quickly. You just still want to keep it simple and keep it seamless for everybody. So I have the solution diagram, and I'll just walk through it briefly. I'll work my way from one corner to another. So within the dotted box is our expense solution. Just starting at the top left, you can obviously do expenses and expense reports from the web. And when I mean web, I mean a browser on a laptop or a computer. We support all the 4 major browsers. Travelers can also do expenses or expense reports from their mobile devices. We support the iPhone, iPad, an Android phone, and we also have an updated release for a BlackBerry phone coming up. We can pull in corporate credit card data. We work with all the major service providers. And then we also have a new feature that we launched late last year, which is called email, where you can forward an email to a fixed mailbox like receipts@gorillaexpense.com, and the application will create the transaction for you and keep it ready. So we almost call it the forward and forget feature. And what that solves is today companies will, or travelers will download a receipt from their email and then they'll attach it again, or they'll have to print that out and attach it to the expense report on paper. Using this feature, you just forward the email and the work is done. And we take it one step further where we bring these email transactions and these corporate card expenses onto the mobile device. That's why you see these dotted lines here. They're available within our mobile app on the mobile device, which makes it a complete your expense report without having to get in front of a computer kind of an app. But the traveler still has the option of doing expenses and expense reports on the web. It's completely user preference. And within the web application, as you can imagine, where everything's electronic, you have alerts, you have approvals, you can set up multiple levels of manager approvals, you can route or redirect expense reports to other managers. We also have a policies module where you can set up policies for different expense types based on amounts so that the CFO or the controller has more visibility into how the spend is going on for a company. And if you attach that with the analytics and reporting module, there's really robust slicing and dicing of data to make sense out of it. I mean, do you want to know how much you've spent with Delta Airlines this year? So things like that, you can derive metrics, you can derive numbers that can be used to improve, to fine-tune the processes, because you already have the data. You might as well leverage it to derive value. And we have a Sunshine Act module. I'll just briefly describe this. I wasn't planning to cover it, but this mainly applies to pharmaceutical, medical device, and biotech companies where they need to capture expenses and tie them to NPI numbers. It's required per federal law, per the Affordable Care Act. It's, I think, renamed to the Open Payments Act since last year, I believe. And then going outside of the dotted box is integration with third-party systems. So if you use a travel booking system and you want to pull in booking data into our application, we can do that. So that's data coming in. Data going out of our application would be to like a payroll system like ADP or Ceridian or any of those payroll systems, where we'll generate a file, and then that file can be imported into the payroll system to issue reimbursements, if that's an approach that you're using today. And finally, once all the expense reports have been compiled and they've been approved, and using our proprietary integration app, we post all those expenses and, of course, the expense data into Dynamics GP with the click of a button. And we'll see this in action live during the demo, which brings me to the demo. And we'll start with the mobile side first. I'll show you what the mobile expense reporting solution looks like. We'll then rinse and repeat that on the web, just so that you get an idea about usability. And then finally, we'll send an expense report to GP and then look at it within GP to see how it's posted the data. So like I mentioned, there are two options. You can use the mobile device or the mobile app to complete the entire expense report without having to get in front of a computer. We'll start there. That's really the more attractive option. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to segue from my PowerPoint. Pull up my iPhone Live. Hopefully you're still able to see it. I'll just pause for a second. In case you're not able to see it, please let me know. So I've logged into Gorilla Expense Pro, which is our mobile app, and I'm looking at this on my iPhone. If I click on the Expenses button, then it opens up this page where you'll notice there are three tabs at the bottom: Mobile, Bank, and Email. So those are the three boxes from the solution diagram. I'll start my way from right to left. Let me jump to the Email tab. So a few minutes before this demo, I sent an email to receipts@gorillaexpense.com. In the subject line of the email, I typed monthly fees or something like that, and then I put the amount as $40. I threw in a PDF receipt as an attachment and then clicked on send. So it's created that first transaction that you see at the top. Each of these pages, the mobile, bank, and email pages, they're all divided into two sections. There's a to-do list and a completed list, which you can look at the two options at the top of the page. So in the to-do list, it just shows me which expenses I'm working on. In the completed list, it'll just show me expense reports that I've submitted as part of an expense report previously. So coming back to this expense, I'll open this up, and the PDF attachment that I threw in the email, it's attached that as a receipt for this transaction, and it's just a sample receipt that I've used. If you do not have a PDF attachment and you still forward that email, then the application will make a PDF of the body of the email and then attach that. So many merchants, like Delta Airlines, for example, no longer has PDF attachments in the email. They'll just have all the information in the body of the email itself. So scrolling further down, I have the receipt. I'm going to pick an expense type. There's a list of expense types I can select from. Each of these expense types has the 4-digit account code that GP needs to see tied to the back end. And the naming convention can be anything you want. I just have a list of example names in the demo application. So I'll pick fees as the expense type. And I'll leave the date as is. It's already pulled in the amount. And if I scroll further down, I can change the currency, by the way, if I want. It's US dollar. We support multi-currency, so you can import exchange rates in the application. So if you change the currency, it'll pull in the respective exchange rate. For our Canadian and European customers, we also support GST and or VAT capture. And we can actually set up tax percentages in the back end using our tax table, where based on the location, it'll automatically use a respective rate to calculate the GST or the VAT. So for this transaction, I'm going to leave it as US dollar. I'll scroll further down. In the merchant field, I can pick a merchant from a list. We provide a canned list of merchants that once you start typing, it's going to filter down and give you a list from which you can pick one. If the traveler does not find a merchant name, then they can click on the plus button at the top right and add a new merchant to the list. That feature can be disabled in case you're concerned about, 10 different spellings of Starbucks. So in this case, I'm going to start typing a name, pick a merchant. The payment method field has different payment methods set up in it. So cash means out-of-pocket or personal credit card or personal expense. Amex is obviously a corporate card, so that will be tagged as a non-reimbursable expense. Now again, the nomenclature can be anything you want. You can call it out-of-pocket, or you can call it personal instead of cash. And for your Amex, or if you have some other card, you can just be generic and call it corporate card. So for this transaction, I've selected cash as a payment method. Based on the payment method selected, the integration app will know which vendor ID to use to pay for this transaction. So since I've picked cash, this is a reimbursable expense. It'll know that it should use my vendor ID within GP because I need to be reimbursed for this. The country, state, city, they've all been defaulted. You can set defaults for the different fields, and that just expedites the expense creation process. So I'll just leave those as is. You can still change them if you want. And then the subject line of the email, I type monthly subscription fees. It's put that in the comments field. So think of this again from a process standpoint. When you have emails in your inbox with receipts, just forward those emails, type something in the subject line that will help you remember what that was about, and the transaction will be available and complete. At that point, all you have to do is attach a receipt, or even if there is no receipt, you can attach it. Most likely the expense will have a receipt. But you can pick the merchant and the expense type, and that's pretty much it. So I'm going to save this expense. As you will notice, the yellow triangle disappeared and it's now turned into a red circle. So when you see a yellow triangle, it just means that that transaction is not complete. There are some fields that need to be completed. But once that is done, it turns into a red circle. I'll now click on Upload All at the bottom. It's going to upload this particular expense, and now it will turn into a green circle. So the process of upload, basically the way it works is as soon as a transaction is available, the traveler will upload that expense and then drag and drop those into an expense report and submit it. So the app encourages the traveler to complete expenses as they go along and not wait till the end of the week or the end of the month where they might have a wad of receipts. It actually, if you're walking out of Starbucks, you just complete the expense right there. That makes the job much easier. Then you would upload it and then put it into a report at a later point. So we have one email expense done. I'll jump to the bank tab, and here I've got a couple of corporate card expenses that have been pulled in. Now, the way the corporate card expenses, the way it works is we support a fully automated integration with the different corporate card service providers. So in that case, they will provide us with a statement. It's typically a daily statement, and that'll be automatically imported into the application. The expense types and the merchants can be potentially pre-selected. So I'll just open one of these. I'll open the first one, which is the airfare expense. click on Edit. So it's already picked airfare as the expense type because we have a keyword, a bank mapping keyword algorithm where based on the keywords supplied to us by the credit card company, our application will automatically select an expense type and a merchant. So it's picked airfare, it's automatically picked the date from the statement, the amount, it's picked the merchant as American Airlines. This is paid to the corporate card, that's why the payment method is Amex, and then the country, state, city also, they come from the statement. And the comments field is basically says that this was some kind of an American Airlines fee for baggage or for upgrade. So really, the corporate card expense shows up as complete. The only thing missing is a receipt. So for that, you can click on the Add Photo button, and it gives you 4 options to attach a receipt to this corporate card expense. You can either attach a receipt from the photo gallery of the device, or you can use the camera and take a picture of a receipt that's in front of you. Or you can also attach a receipt from your Dropbox account. So if you have a PDF receipt sitting in your Dropbox account and you use Dropbox when you travel, just pull that in from there. And the 4th option is you can also merge from email. So if you have a corporate card expense, then that's going to show up in the bank tab. But that same expense might also have a receipt in your inbox, right, which you can potentially forward. So you have 2 sources for essentially the same transaction. So when you click on Merge from Email, the application will combine both of them and tell the traveler that they're basically one. It's the same expense. In this case, I'll just go to Photo Gallery. I'll pick an example receipt that I have, and I'm going to save that, and that's pretty much it. That's really how simple it is to submit your corporate card expenses with receipts. And I can obviously do the same thing with the expense below that as well. But now I'm going to click on, actually, let me just upload one expense, or actually upload both. We'll upload both the expenses. So they're both turned green. So we have 2 corporate card expenses done. Now I'll jump to the mobile tab, and this is where you can create expenses from scratch by taking a picture of a receipt, right? So to do that, I will click on Options. It gives me 3 options. I can create an expense. I can obviously delete it, or I can use Receipt Scan. So Receipt Scan is our OCR scanning feature. So let me pick Receipt Scan first. I've got a receipt in front of me. I'll take a picture. I'll say Use Photo, and then it'll start uploading this receipt. It'll start scanning the receipt, and then it's going to start extracting the data from the receipt to complete the transaction. So it's pending. Now it's scanning. This can take anywhere from a few minutes to several minutes, depending on the quality of the receipt. So while that's happening in the background, let's go ahead and create one more expense. I'll click on Create Expense in this case. So this is where, if you want to do it, if you want to do it pretty much instantaneously, then you can click on Create Expense. You can fill out the expense details, attach a receipt, and submit it. So that's available as an option. It really, again, comes down to user preference. But in this case, what I'll do is I'll pick a different expense type. I'll pick mileage because the behavior for that is a little bit different. Once I do that, it changes the page, right? It now shows me a number of miles field, and then it's automatically pulled in the rate per mile from my user profile, which is 0.575 for 2015. Now when I click on number of miles, I can either key in the number of miles if I know what it is, or I can use Google Maps to do the math for me. So if I click on Calculate Miles, it opens up this page. I'll pick a start. Then I'll pick an end. And then when I click on Done, it's going to show me that's 454 miles. I'll click on Done. I'll click on Save. I'll come back to the transaction page. It's calculated the math for me. And then in the comment section, it puts the start and the end addresses in there. So I will click on Save, and that's it. My mileage expense is done. For the return trip, what you can do is just tap on that mileage expense. You'll now see a pop-up. There's a copy option. If you click on copy, Then you go back into the number of miles field, and now you're going to see a reverse address option as well. So if you just click on that, it's going to reverse the addresses. And then you would do the same thing. You would just quickly save them, and that's your round trip. So now I'm going to click on Upload All. It'll upload both of those mileage expenses. So we've got several expenses that are done. We've got 2 from the mobile, 2 from the bank tab, and we did 1 from the email. So let's click on Back. And now I'm going to go back to the home page of the app, and now I'm going to create an expense report. So I'm going to click on Reports, click on Create Report. I'll give this report a name. Something pertinent. And then the report type field, there are multiple report types that are available. Again, these are configured to your requirements. Even the naming of these report types are user-defined. The corporate report type has been configured to give me or show me a cash advance field. That's just the way it's been configured in the demo account. It doesn't have to be the same. The project report type gives me project number and customer fields, and we can pull in project numbers from GP. And of course, there's a customer field where you can pick customer names. Also, this can come from GP as well. So if you want to tag expense reports with project numbers and customer names, you can do that by using the project report type. I'll just leave it as corporate report type. I'll pick a start date. Just go 1 month wide, and then an end date, and then I'll click on Save. And now this creates a skeleton expense report to which now we can add those line item expenses that we just uploaded. So click on the report, and I'll click on Add Existing Transactions at the bottom right. And there you have those 2 expenses that were completed from the mobile app for the mileage. I'll just tap on them, click on Add. Then I'll jump to the Bank tab, and you have those 2 corporate card expenses there. Again, just tap on them, click on Add. I'll jump finally to the Email tab where there was just that 1 single expense. Tap on that, click on Add. So all the 5 expenses have been added to the report. It shows you the source of the transaction, shows you the expense type, and then shows you the amount. The corporate card expenses are shown with a red colored text, and then it breaks it down at the bottom. It says what the total amount is, what is not reimbursable, and then of course what is reimbursable back to the employee. So now I'll click on the Validate button at the bottom left, and it'll just run through and make sure that everything is good. And once everything is good, only then does it let me submit the expense report by clicking on the Submit button. So I'll click on Submit. The expense report will be submitted. What will happen now is an email will be sent to my manager that says that CV has submitted an expense report. The report number is GE1260. The name of the report, the date range of the report will be in the email, and there'll also be a URL in the email for the manager to click and take action on the report. Every expense report in our system has a unique confirmation number. So in a few clicks, we have completed an entire expense report from the mobile device without having to get in front of a computer. Let's just go back. Let's look at the OCR expense just to see if it's completed scanning. So if I go back to expenses, there you go. See, that's the receipt we took a picture of. It's already scanned it, and it's completed everything for me in here. The amount, the date. All I would have to do now is I just have to pick the expense type, click on Save, and then upload it. So that's how the OCR feature works. So to conclude what we've looked at with the mobile app, just going to minimize and come back to my PowerPoint. So the main objectives, right, with the mobile app, as you can imagine, are to complete expenses with receipts without having to get in front of a computer. We bring in expenses from different sources into one place on the mobile app, whether it's a corporate card expenses or whether it's the email expenses from a merchant that's sitting in your inbox, or if you're walking out of Starbucks with a receipt in front of you, you can complete all of those from one place. It's an easy, a very simple to use app. It's not complex, as you can see. Not too many screens, not too many moving pieces, fairly simple. And it includes all the information broken up by line items. It's not just a blob of receipts. You have line item expenses. You can set up policies for different expenses, amount-based or receipt-based policies, and you can really control the spend pretty well with the mobile app while making it functional enough for the traveler to get the job done. And finally, the mobile app also works on an offline mode. So if you don't have connectivity, if you're sitting on the plane, you don't have 3G, 4G, or Wi-Fi, but you've got 5 receipts in front of you, you can still complete those expenses. Quickly take a picture, pick the expense type, and save it. You can't upload it, you can't submit it just yet, but the bulk of the work is done in terms of creating expenses. So let's look at this approach now from the web. We'll just quickly rinse and repeat this process of creating an expense report and submitting it. Of course, we'll also approve that expense report as a manager and get that report ready to be pushed to GP. So you'll probably get a better idea of how the functionality looks on the web application. So let me segue to I'll just open up a browser. There's a fixed URL that you would go to, put the username, password. It's the same username, password as a mobile app. And once you click on sign in, it's going to bring you into the web application. All of these buttons expand into additional functions. The key functions are available at the top. There are 2 main sections in the middle. There's an expense reporting section, and then there's a timesheet section. We're going to ignore the timesheet section and just focus on the expense side, which is again broken up into 2 subsections. You have expense reports that you're working on as a traveler, and below that are expense reports submitted to me for approval as a manager. And the section where I'm working on expense report has an unsubmitted and a submitted tab. So I just got one report that I'm working on, and the submitted tab is a list of reports that I've submitted in the past with the different date ranges and with different statuses of the reports. Some of them are manager approved, some of them have just been submitted. If you look at this report, this is the one we just submitted from the mobile app. So the status of that is submitted to manager. And we'll see that when we log into my manager's account to approve a report. So let's click on create report. We'll give this report a similar name, except I'll just differentiate it by calling it web. I'll pick the same report type. And I'll go 1 month wide. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to induce a couple of policy violations here so you can see what it looks like. So I've created a skeleton expense report, very similar to what we did on the mobile app. And now if I click on add existing transactions, this is where I would add transactions to the report which have been uploaded from the mobile device or imported from the credit card or that have been sent via email. So it just gives me a transactions bucket, and I would pick the ones that I want, click on add, and then it's going to add it to the report, just like we did on the mobile app, right? We tapped on those line item expenses and clicked on add. It dropped them into the report. It's the same thing here. So we've already done that, and really there's nothing much to show there, but I just want to show you how line item expenses uploaded from the mobile app or imported from the credit card will show up to add to a report on the web. If you've already added those expenses to a report on the mobile app and submitted it, then obviously they're not going to show up on this list, because they've already been incorporated into a report and submitted. So that's really how simple it is to do it on the web. So let's try the other option, which is we're now going to introduce a 4th source, which is called web. So we've looked at 3 sources so far, which is mobile, bank, email. The 4th one is web when you click on add new transaction, which basically means you're creating an expense on the web, a line item expense. The page is very similar to the expense page on the mobile app, and the same list of expense types, and it's all exactly the same. So I'll pick an expense type, I'll pick airfare, I'll pick a date, I'm going to put in an amount, and then I'll leave it as US dollar. I'll browse to attach a receipt. You can attach JPEGs, PNGs, PDFs on the web application. You pick one receipt. And again, just like the mobile app, you can set defaults on the web as well. You can always change them. But I'm just going to change this just to have two different sources, or I should say two different payment methods. I'll say, does this just pay to the corporate card, just for this demo. And then in the merchant field, I'll start typing. I'll pick Delta Airlines as a merchant. I'll leave country, state, city as is. And now when I click on save, it's not going to let me save it. It's going to say you've exceeded our policy of $1,000 for airfare. So I need to explain why I exceeded this policy. So I'll say something like last minute booking, John okayed it. And then click on save. And only then does it let me save the transaction, but it's thrown a violation flag that says the policy was $1,000, I spent $1,250. So I've exceeded it. So it becomes very obvious for the approving manager that I've exceeded the policy for an expense. So especially if this expense report has 10 or 15 transactions, the ones with the violations will really stick out. So that's one. Let's just make one more flavor. Let's pick mileage again, just to show you what the mileage feature looks like on the web. It's the same thing. We have it integrated with Google Maps, just like you saw on the mobile app. So I'll pick a start and an end, and then click on save. So it's calculated the amount, and again, it's put the start and the end in the comments field. I'm going to click on save. So there we have a mileage expense that is done as well. I want to make sure that I have two different payment methods, one with the corporate card and one with out-of-pocket. So just looking at the functionality at the transaction level, we talked about the violation. You can delete an expense, you can edit an expense line item, you can copy an expense. The fourth option is you can also split an expense, especially useful for like a hotel expense that was paid to the corporate card. So you might have spent $500 at Marriott. Many companies will require that to be broken up into different expense types, right? So it could be $300 for room, which might have its own expense code, $100 for meals, which will have its own expense code, and then $100 for parking, which will have its own expense code. So by using the split feature, I can open up that expense and I can split it into multiple expense types. It'll still make sure that the data is good and correct, because it's not going to let the traveler change the total amount. And it'll only let you save the split if you've used up 100% of the total amount. So that's a split feature. There's a cost center allocation. I'll come back to that towards the end. That's an advanced feature where you can allocate expenses to other departments, other business units, or other cost centers. So if you're splitting expenses between multiple departments, you can use that feature. Or if you're allocating, like for example, I'm in sales, I could go on a trip where marketing wants to pay for it, right? So I can allocate that expense to marketing, so it'll use the code for the marketing department to form the correct distribution that GP needs to see, because otherwise you'll just be moving the numbers or adjusting the numbers within GP. But this cost center feature will do that work for you. So let's come back to that towards the end, and if there are any questions, we can look at that in more detail. That's a little bit more advanced feature. Other than that, I've got the date. It shows me the merchant. The receipt for the mileage expense is just simply a snapshot of the Google Maps screen. And I'm using discrete city addresses. I mean, if you have an actual address, it'll obviously show that. Let me open up the airfare receipt. It's just a nice, clear view of the receipt. And of course, you have then the expense type and the amount. So I'm going to click on Validate. It's going to check and make sure if everything is good, and only when everything is good does it present me with the Submit button. I'll click on Submit, similar to the mobile app, or I should say similar to the expense report we submitted on the mobile app. An email is sent to my manager to review this expense report. and to get it ready to be pushed to GP. So from a traveler standpoint, again, I'm presented with a confirmation page that shows the status as submitted to manager, and it shows me at the top that the next manager in the sequence is Tim. Of course, in the demo account, I just have one level, but you can set up multiple levels of approvals where you'll just see more bubbles and more names. So let's log out from my account and let's log in as Tim, my manager. So now we're looking at this as a manager. If I scroll down to the bottom, there's a list of expense reports submitted to me for approval. This is the one we sent from the mobile device. This is the one we just submitted from the web. So I'll open up this one. Now, looking at this as a manager, you can see it's very obvious to see what the violations are, right? So if I have 10 or 15 expenses in here, it'll just stick out. From a taking action standpoint, as a manager, I can choose to approve or reject this expense report. So I can basically go down here. I can say, you know, this is airfare is exceeded. The reason for that is last-minute booking, and John okayed it. So I might say, okay, that's good to go. I'm going to approve it. Or I can edit the amount, or I can delete that expense and not reimburse the employee. This is paid to the corporate card, so typically you would warn the employee that they've exceeded the policy and that they shouldn't do that, because the next time they might have to pay for it, right? So functionally, you can approve or reject the report, type in the comments explaining either one. The second option is you can also redirect expense report to other managers in the system. So if you want somebody else to take a look at it, then you can do that. If you have project tracking for expenses, then we can also define a project role, and the expense reports can be automatically redirected to project owners or project managers so that they know what the spend is. The third option is you can edit the report. Now, this is very useful for an accounting or an AP manager. And typically what we recommend, if a company has multiple levels of approvals, we recommend that you have accounting or AP be the final approving manager before the data is sent to GP, because then they'll be like the gatekeeper. So if something needs to be fixed, they can fix it. The expense report is not stalled. So just to give an example, in this case, maybe the correct date was not the 1st, maybe it was the 5th, or maybe the expense type was incorrect, or maybe a decimal point was off. You know, changes like those, which today many companies will send that back to the employee for them to fix and to resubmit it. If the employee is back on the next trip, that expense report is going to sit for days, if not weeks. So in this case, accounting can make those changes that that has to happen, and they can send it through and get it ready to be pushed to GP. Any changes they make, an email will be sent back to the employee telling them what those changes were. Again, that's part of the maintaining full visibility aspect. So this report looks good. I'm going to click on approve, and now this will send an email back to the employee that says Tim has approved it, and now it is with AP for them to send to the accounting system. The report number is 1261. It's manager approved. So let's take this all the way to the final step, which is GP. We support integrations with different versions of GP, and like I mentioned, there's two standard integration formats. One is, the standard one is within payables, where we create an invoice with respect to vendor ID, but we also have a project accounting based integration as well. So let me pull up our server that has GP. So I'm going to open up GP 2013 and I'm going to set it aside. And then I'll open up the integration app. So this is our proprietary tool that connects our web application to GP. It gets both the system talking to each other. So I'll pick GP 2013 and I'll log into the integration app. You probably noticed that this is an admin type user. So this is only accessible to accounting, AP, or IT. It's not available to a traveler or a department manager or somebody like that. This has to be an accounting or an AP function. So I'll click on sign in, and then I'm going to click on Export Expense Reports because that's what we're doing. The integration app does several things, but in this case we'll just look at exporting expenses, and you see different expense reports submitted by different employees at different times, but all are manager approved. Only manager approved expense reports will show up on this page. This is the report we just worked on, 1261. So I'll select that report. I'll pick the next status in the workflow, which is AP approved, and then once I click on Update Selected, it'll send the data into GP. From a process standpoint, as you can imagine, you would have several expense reports sitting here at the end of the week or end of 2 weeks, whenever you typically process expense reports. You can come in here, you can select all of the reports by clicking on Select All, click on Update Selected, and just give it a few seconds, maybe a few minutes, and everything should be sent to GP without having to manually key anything in. That's the objective here. So the progress bar has gone all through, which means it's processed it and it's turned green, which means it's a successful push. We also have a validate expense report feature down here. So typically for P-card expense reconciliations, you can also validate to make sure that the expense type and other details are actually correct before pushing it to GP. So that way you know that everything is good to go and it's just sending the data through. So let's go look for this expense report within GP, which is 1261. And I believe this is a standard payables integration, so I'll go into purchasing, go into payables, let's see. And there you go, it's created a couple of invoices, so I'll open up the first one. So the first invoice was for $12.50, and as you probably remember, this was paid to the corporate card. So it's pulled in the vendor ID of Amex, which is our corporate card, for $12.50. It's within a batch called Gorilla, just to differentiate it from other batches that you might be working on at the same time. It takes a report number and puts that in the voucher number field, and then it appends a number after that based on the number of transactions. And if I open up the distributions, it'll show me the entire segment, or I should say the entire distribution with the different segments, and then it also maps the expense report number and the merchant name to the memo field, so that when you look at these transactions within GP, they all don't look the same. So that's one invoice. The second invoice was obviously payable to me for the mileage expense. So it's taken the same report number but put a number 1 after that. Again, it's within the it's within a batch called Gorilla, and in the distributions here, it'll again put the report number. And for mileage, we really don't map any merchant. We can put a generic term in there like mileage or something like that, but it still shows me the report number if I need to mine for this information within GP. Since we sent both of these invoices into GP, if I go back to the integration app, click on Reload, that expense report will disappear from the list because it's been successfully sent through. Similarly, if I come back to the web application, you can see that it still says manager approved, right? If I refresh this page, it'll now say AP approved, because that's what we just did. And on this page, there's a couple of other features. One is an audit trail, which just gives a running summary of the expense report with date and timestamp. So it'll tell an employee when they submitted it, when did the manager approve it, and when did AP approve it. So it shows me at the top, the first line at the report level is when I submitted the expense report with the date and the timestamp, when did my manager approve it, and when did accounting or AP approve it. So you know, you basically don't have people knocking on your door asking whether their expense report has been approved or not, so they can get reimbursed. And at the transaction level, it'll show you when the transaction was added to the report. If any of the managers changed a transaction, then that'll show up as well in the history down here. It'll show which manager changed a particular transaction, or if accounting changed a transaction, it'll show them and who the person was and when they did it. The other feature that's available to all the users really is a PDF preview, and this generates a PDF document of the entire expense report with the receipts attached to it. It's a very handy document that you can use. You can save either as a backup, or if you're billing back your clients. Many of our customers use this PDF. They'll just put a front cover page, like an invoice page, and then send this to their clients as proof. And what we've done for customers is we'll put your logo here, so it looks like an internal document. But it has a summary page, which has a table with all the details, the expense details. It shows me my details, as in which department, which company, which business unit I belong to. And the following pages, it has the respective expense types, as well as the date of that particular expense type. So that's the mileage expense, and then this one was the airfare expense. And of course, I'm using example receipts here. It's just a handy tool to have. And then, of course, we can go in, we can run some reports. I'll open up a couple of reports really quick before opening up the floor to questions. But you can run reports by expense types, by employees. You can run expense reports by unsubmitted bank transactions if you have corporate cards, and this is a very popular expense, or I should say popular report type. And I'll just run it to see if I have any data. Let's see if it gives me something. So what this does is, what you would expect is if you import corporate card transaction into the application, then at the end of the month, when you reconcile the credit card statement, it should match the amount for that particular payment method from our system, right? So for Amex, if our AP manager were to match all the Amex payment method expenses from Gorilla to the Amex statement, it should match. It never happens in real life. And AP managers spend hours, if not days, pouring through a 50, 60-page credit card statement to find out which those missing transactions are. This report tells them in just a click which expenses were not reconciled. So there's 3 expenses in here which were imported into the application or which were sent to me by Amex that I've not incorporated into an expense report. So basically, our credit card statement and the payment method report in our application would be off by $408.34. And our AP manager would know which transactions exactly those are, and she would tell me that I need to put this into a report and submit it, so she can reconcile the credit card statement. So it's a very handy report. It's a very popular report within our for our customers who import corporate credit card transactions into the application. And I guess that's pretty much the key points that I wanted to cover. So we've basically looked at the pain points with expense reporting. We discussed that. We completed expenses, sent it through all the way electronically, no paper. Sent the expense data to GP with the click of a button. Obviously, we just ran one report, but you can go in, you can run additional reports and really get more visibility into your T&E spend. And at the end of the day, it's flexibility and convenience for everybody, right? Not just the traveler, but even the approving managers, even accounting and AP. This automated process makes all of their lives much simpler. And with that, just don't want to take too much more time. I'd like to open up the floor to any questions that you might have. So if you have questions, please type them in the questions box, and we can review them and discuss them. And if you want to look at something in more detail or a specific feature, we can jump into that as well. So we have a question that just came in, which is, Can you use this if you're only downloading from the credit card companies and your employees are not submitting expense reports? Yes, so that is a separate product for, it's basically a P-card reconciliation product. It kind of works very similarly, but in that case, we would just import the P-card statement into the application, and there is no employee or no expense reports. Typically, the AP manager or the accounting manager would just take those P-card expenses, put them into a batch, and send that batch through. You can set up approvals if you want. Maybe the controller or maybe the CFO needs to approve it, but typically with our customers, we've not seen manager approval either. They would just pull it in. The P-card transactions will get tagged with the respective expense type and the respective merchant, and then using the same integration app and the GP web services will push the data into GP using automation. You don't have to manually key that in. So yes, that's available. It's a separate product. It's really not travel expenses or employee expense reports. It's entirely purchase card reconciliation. So hope that answers your question. Any other questions?
Well, it looks like everyone's questions have been answered.
Okay. Well, you have my contact information. If you have any questions after this webinar, please feel free to send me a message. You can also contact your sales rep at IBG, and they can reach out to us as well with any specific requirements. Thank you again, and I'll give the controls back to you, Amanda.
Thank you.